Well, welcome into another Q&A episode of Dealing the Cards, where this time we'll be answering your questions regarding the future of Luken Baker, what the Cardinals' rotation should look like next year, potential hitting coach options, and also they're only 5 games out of the playoffs. So one of you asked, "Why is the season over?" In my eyes, let's talk about all this and more in this Q&A episode of Dealing the Cards. Well, hey, thanks for joining us again. On Fridays, we take your questions and we answer them. That some of them are things that we already talked about on the podcast, but we get to just address further. And some of these things are topics that maybe we didn't get to, but you guys are interested in. So again, as always, like and subscribe helps the channel out a ton. Comment down below any questions you have that you want us to go through in a future episode. As well as just let us know your thoughts in response to the answers I'm giving today and the thoughts I'm giving today. We love the community engagement. It's really fun to be able to have dialogue back and forth and to see what you guys are thinking in terms of what the Cardinals should be doing, hypotheticals, or what's currently happening, all those good things. So we'll start off today with an interesting question regarding hitting coaches for the Cardinals. And there was a question that was, who would you like to see out as an outside the organization option as a possible hitting coach replacement for Turner Ward? Um, I'm gonna say I'll give one name because I think there's an interesting link there, but it's just hard, especially with like a hitting coach, to like just look around the league and say, well, this guy. I mean, I could give thoughts and guys I think could be a good fit, but that's all like. I mean, this is what I'm about to say is the name I'll throw out there is speculation. But like when it's this deep cut, I feel like it's real speculation at that point, unless I've heard something and can like report something, but I have not heard any tidbits. Um, Maybe there's some Cardinals in the former Cardinals or Cardinals staff within the organization, like a Ryan Ludwig, or maybe some former players that potentially would fit that role. But if you're talking out, and that I feel like more is something that we could actually speculate on and have some names to throw out there. But if you want to talk about like outside the organization replacement, the one name that really comes to mind, his name is Brant Brown. You might not be familiar with him already, but he worked with Skip Schumacher as his hitting coaching coordinator in Miami last year when they made the playoffs, and it really overachieved in so many ways. Then he was hired to go to Seattle to kind of be like their hitting he wasn't their hitting coach. They had multiple kind of guys that spoke into it, but he was more philosophically as an organization. How do we approach hitting? And he was let go by the Mariners during the season, so he didn't even get through a full season with them because of their failures offensively. You've seen Julio Rodriguez underperform this year and a lot of other things, but they've also continued to fail since they got rid of him. So, and they fired their manager since then. So, I think he was so an interesting interview would be to watch. He was on the Foul Territory and look up Brant Brown Foul Territory podcast. Kind of talked it through. I really liked some of the tidbits he talked about when it comes to philosophy and playing team offense, picking each other up, situational hitting, not necessarily worrying about the back of the baseball card stats, but figuring out how to drive runs in. There was a lot of interesting tidbits in there where I was like, okay, this guy seems like he's a mix of old school and new school in a way that I think Cardinal fans would appreciate. And then also he made it very clear he would love to work with Skip Schumacher again. So the reason I throw that out there is like, even though I think they'll probably roll with Ollie Marmol next year, and I'm fine with that. If they go with a Skip Schumacher type, Brant Brown seems like a guy that could be a good fit. So that's a name to throw out there. Otherwise, it's just pure speculation because even that's real speculation here as well. But another really interesting question, and one that I don't think it's being talked about, but I don't know if necessarily this tidbit is being offered into this part of the conversation. But we got asked, do you see the Cardinals moving Ivan Herrera or Pedro Pages? So, do I see it as in like, do I think it's possible? Yes, I definitely think it's possible that one of them is moved, probably Ivan Herrera. Do I think it will happen? I actually might lean toward yes, but not like a hard, like the Cardinals are going to trade Ivan Herrera this offseason. More just kind of looking at the tea leaves. So obviously the one everyone talks about is again, they continue to kind of roll with Pedro Pages over Ivan Herrera when it comes to playing time. They like Pedro Pages' defense. Obviously they love Ivan, or I shouldn't say love, otherwise I think he'd be in the lineup, but I think they're really intrigued by Ivan Herrera's bat, but I think the arm strength issue and there's just some other things too that I just don't think. Clearly, they don't trust him enough, and it's really unfortunate because I think Ivan Herrera clearly has the higher ceiling here. But I don't know. It's just again, this is what I think they're going to do, not what they should do. Ivan Herrera also is out of options next year. So if they want him on the major league roster next year, or at least if they bring him back next year, they can't send him to Memphis again without passing him through waivers. And so when it comes to a roster crunch issue there, when you kind of lack options with a guy like that and you already kind of potentially prefer the other catcher over him, and he's going to have some kind of trade value this offseason, although it's probably diminished compared to what it used to be or what it would have been if they've been playing him all year. That's aside. I think I could easily see them moving Ivan Herrera in a trade this offseason for, I don't know, whether it's prospects, major league ready pitching, a different kind of bat that fits a different profile. I think there's maybe an outside shots they could maybe move positions with him, but I don't know. Like I don't think that's gonna happen. Maybe they try to add like first base versatility for him, so that he can get into the lineup more other ways. But I think part of the reason why he's so valuable is the bat is as a catcher. But yeah, I do think there's a real scenario here with Ivan Herrera's moved this offseason. Do I necessarily like the idea of that? Not really, because I think it's really valuable to have two good catchers, and I think you could have that in Ivan Herrera and Wilson Contreras. It's nothing against Pedro Pages. I just think he's a good backup. Ivan Herrera, I think, could be a starter with a lot of teams. So I'd love to have that on a team, especially with Wilson Contreras, who has gotten hurt a lot this year, who's only getting older. He's going to be catching less and less. Like, I don't think he's going to be catching more and more over the next few years. So you're going to have to keep using that backup more and more often. So maybe that's the reason they use 3 catchers next year, but I also don't love that. So we'll see what happens with that. Before we go any further, though, I want to thank one of our sponsors, and it's SeatGeek. And again, if you're going to the ballpark, we'll talk in a second here about Cardinals playoff chances and whether or not they can actually make the playoffs this year, which is a whole thing. But they are playing good baseball right now. So, and I love watching baseball, even when the Cardinals aren't necessarily going to make the playoffs, and even though they aren't necessarily we know they're not going to win a World Series this year, it's still fun to watch baseball. And so if you want to get out to Busch Stadium, you want to go to the ballpark, use our code NewtNews for $20 off your first purchase of $50 or more. You can also go to like St. Louis FC, go to Chicago Bears game. I play that every time because it annoys Andrew, but Caleb Williams is the real deal. You want to go to a concert, you can use that code as well. So make sure to use our code NewtNews over at SeatGeek. You also want to thank 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're open at 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet, and they're open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday, 9 to 4 on Saturdays. They buy, sell, and trade all sports trading cards and Pokemon cards as well. You can follow them on Instagram at 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles, where they're always posting different kinds of deals and stuff going on. So you can see individual cards, box sets, specials they got going on, all that kind of stuff before you go check them out in person. But definitely go check them out. Let them know we sent you. If you like to open packs, collect specific cards, collections, all that kind of stuff, 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles is your spot. So thanks, 314. So we'll continue on with the conversation today. Again, we always appreciate the questions that are submitted. So please continue to do that going forward. Like and subscribe again. Comment down below your responses to some of these as well. But let's get into it. So the Cardinals are only 5 games back out of a playoff spot. Why do you think they have no chance of making it? It'll be hard for sure, but they're not out yet. Fair, right? Like they're not mathematically eliminated, and they are playing decent baseball as of late, right? They're 6-4 in the last 10. They're 71-69 now. I mean, they're not bad right now. That's at least I don't think so. They've been playing against some pretty good opponents and doing pretty well. So there's a lot, like when you look at how the team's playing right now, like, well, can't be eliminated yet, right? Well, go look at FanGraphs at the playoff odds right now. They have a 0.1% chance of winning the division and a 1.3% chance of the wild card. So that gives them a grand total of a 1.4% chance of making the playoffs right now. That's where I'm at. Like, yes, there's a chance, but we're not talking about a 50% chance here. We're talking about like a 1% chance the Cardinals make the playoffs. So yes, that's where I'm saying they're out of it, because if we theoretically, mathematically, if you run the season 100 times, 99 times, or the rest of the season 100 times, 99 times, they're not making the playoffs. So I'm going to err on the side they're probably not making the playoffs here. Also, like so not only do the Cardinals have to play exceptional down the stretch to make the playoffs, they also need the teams in front of them to not play well. And the Cubs have been playing well lately, and they're ahead of them in the standings. The Mets have been playing well. They're ahead of them in the standings. The Braves have been playing well. They're ahead of them in the standings. And who's the other? The Mets. So Mets, Braves, Cubs, and Mets, Braves, Cubs. Who am I missing here? Oh no, it's three. Yeah, it's three teams ahead in the standings. Miscounting. But they're all three playing well right now. So you need to be better than all three of them down the stretch if you want to make that last wild card spot. And that's where I'm like, if it was one team they're competing against, it's like, okay, well, you just need the Cubs to you just need to be better than the Cubs, or you just need to be better than Braves, or you just need to be better than the Mets. You need to be significantly better than all three of them down the stretch. And that's where it's really hard to convince me they're gonna make the playoffs. If though, like we weren't talking about like 20-ish games left in the season, if we were talking about 50, 60 games left, I'd be like, oh yeah, this Cardinal team has a chance. There's time. But that's the big things. They've run out of time and they don't control their own destiny. And for that reason, I don't think there's a chance to make the playoffs. Yes, technically there is a chance, but I don't really see this team going on like that 17 game win streak, which is basically what it requires at this point. I don't know the number off the top of my head. They can lose like probably 5 games at most down the stretch if they really want to make this happen, barring like major collapses from the teams in front of them. So for that reason, kind of out on the idea that they're making the playoffs, but one can hope. So the next few questions are all more related toward the future of the Cardinals. So 2025, they're really interesting questions about roster construction stuff. I'll address this kind of more vague or big picture one, and then we can talk about the rotation and then first base specifically. But there's a question about, do we see them going after a bat this offseason? Um, I think it will definitely be in the conversation. Like I don't think you can come off a disappointing offensive season like this, and disappointing is putting it mildly, and not consider upgrading the offense. Like that'd be kind of tough not to. I just don't know what that looks like and how. Because there's a lot of factors at play, right? Like how much payroll are they going to be able to work with this year? And then when that number's set, how much payroll can they free up? Because you do have Gibson and Lynn coming off the books, but they pick up one of those options or both those options. That's money that you don't have there. Are you going to bring back Goldie or not? That influences the money. Are you going to be able to offload Miles Michaelis or Steven Matz? So at least from like a free agency standpoint, it's hard to know what that looks like. Like, sure, there's bats like a Teoscar Hernandez and Anthony Santander out there. The bigger names of Juan Soto, which it's not happening, but he's out there. Pete Alonso, Christian Walker. There's other names. Like, sure, they could go after a bat. And if I'm thinking free agent wise, I'm guessing it's probably more of a smaller move. I don't necessarily want to say like as small as like Matt Carpenter, Brandon Crawford, but probably more in like the like what Tommy Pham would have been this offseason, or like a Jock Peterson, not necessarily his name, but like those type of like tier moves where they aren't necessarily going to get a huge contract and they could not work out, but they also have shown the ability to be really, really valuable pieces to an offense. I could see them doing something like that, but it also depends some on what they want to do positionally. Because catcher, they're set. First base, again, if they bring back Goldie, they're not going to do anything else. But if they don't bring back Goldie, do they feel comfortable Burles and Baker? We'll get into that. I mean, second base, you have Donovan, Gorman, so JCL could play there. When you've got shortstops, you're in Arenado. I don't think they're moving off of, so third base will be fine too. Also, cool news right here. I saw that Chase Davis was just promoted to Double-A, so that's really encouraging. I don't think 2025 is in the cards, but man, they need some offense in the system to start producing. So that's a good sign. But then speaking of outfielders, do they stick with Lars Newbar, Victor Scott, Michael Ciani, and Jordan Walker? So like I guess DH is technically like there's a way to fit another bat into the lineup, even if they keep all those guys. But this becomes clearer if we know for sure they're going to move on for Gorman. It's like, okay, well, there's another spot on the roster that they can play with, or they move on from Nootbaar, they move on from Nato, or move on from Goldie, or multiple of those guys. Until we know that, it's kind of hard. So I say yes, they'll go for a bat. I just don't really know what the level of it is yet. And my guess would be it's not, I mean, they might get someone as small as the Crawford Carpenter types, but my guess is it's the tier like above that, but not quite like an everyday awesome regular where you're like, oh, that's Anthony Santander. But maybe it's like a right-handed version of Jock Peterson type of thing, especially with their struggles against left-handed pitching. But very left-handed bat heavy lineup that they kind of need to fix that. So yeah, we'll get more into the first base conversation in a minute, because I do think I have some thoughts on that. And there's specifically a question about Luken Baker we'll finish up with. I know many of you are really interested in our just in Luken Baker conversation in general, but this next one's really fun. And actually, my eyes were like I'm getting more and more interested about the Cardinals rotation next year, but I'm also a little bit weary of how they're going to handle it. Um, Colored me surprised on that one. I'm sure you're not. Ideal rotation for next season was a question. So they threw out a rotation of Gray with a missing link in the number 2 start spot. So basically, they're saying that they should have money to go get another top end starter. So the thrown out rotation here is Gray, another frontline starter, Quinn Matthews or Libby. I'm guessing they're probably more so mean Quinn, Eric Fetty, Andre Palante with Matthew Liberatore, Tink Hens, Michael McGreevy as injury subs is what they put out there. And they also asked, Goldie and Lynn, Gibson come off the books, so you should have more money freed up there. On the money side, again, we don't know what payroll is going to look like. So I'm not anticipating it. And again, this is me purely speculating. I'm not anticipating them dropping it a ton like the past 2 off seasons, especially this off season. Like Bill DeWitt, the third was like, hey, we're going to climb the payroll rankings. And they went up a little bit. So I don't know. Maybe when they say drop payroll, they're actually more significant about it. When they say raise, it's actually small. But I could see it being like a small-ish dip. But that's going to frustrate everyone, right? Because people want payroll raise. So any dip is not going to go over well. But if it's a significant dip, it doesn't even matter that Goldie, Lynn, and Gibson come off the books. I don't think they're going to be going after a frontline starter. Not saying they shouldn't. Again, that's not the conversation here. That's not my point. I'm just saying what I think is going to happen. But yes, this rotation would really benefit from another proven frontline starter. And I think they should go do that. So here's kind of like if a perfect world, I'm looking at the rotation right now, what I would do with it and how I would stack it up going into 2025. What I would do is I would decline Gibson and Lynn because those are easy. You can easily let them off the books. And then from there, you have Gray, Matthews, Fetty, and Palante. So that's that was the part of the rotation that was thrown out there. I would say I'm confident at this point to say Quinn Matthews can go try and win that job, and I think he's good enough that he could. So I'll pencil him in there, but the Cardinals should not go into 2025 being like, we need Quinn Matthews to make the rotation. Well, like ceiling wise, they do, but they shouldn't be like, well, we have no other options. And guess what? They don't need to do that because even behind, so let's say they roll with Sonny Gray, Quinn Matthews, Eric Fetty, and Andre Palante, and they go and get a free agent starter, which we'll talk about in a second, or a trade for one. Then they still have the depth of Michael McGreevy, Steven Matz, Miles Michaelis, Sem Robersa, Adam Kloffenstein, Goran Graceffo, and Tink Hens. Like, and all those guys are very different situations, right? Like Tink Hens is like, whoa, exciting, could be really awesome. Also might not be ready. While Miles Michaelis is like, whoa, super low ceiling, but you at least know he could throw big league innings. So very different types of depth options. But I just named 7 different interesting depth options where, again, Tink Hens is like, whoa, he could be like really good for them next year. Not saying really good as in like an ace, but like better than a typical 5 or 4. You have the Steven Matzes of the world who could be decent in the back end. Miles Michaelis, again, it's like we know at least he can throw innings. We've seen what McGreevy can do in one start. And again, AAA. So since the month of June, he has a 2.77 ERA since beginning of June. So 15 starts, 3.46 FIP, 25% K rate, 87 innings thrown. His last 6 MLB or AAA starts since his MLB debut. This part comes from Kareem, 35 and 2/3 innings. This is McGreevy, 2.52 ERA, 2.00 FIP, 26 K percentage, 4% walk rate. Like McGreevy's looked really good lately. So him as like my next man up, I feel pretty good about. Andre Palante in the rotation, I feel good about. Fetty, I feel good about as my back end of the rotation. Matthews, if he can win a job, I feel really good as like a number 4 threes type. And again, we'll see what he can pitch to. But if you're gonna roll with a lot of that youth, there's even less excuse not to go get that other frontline starter, right? Now, what is the Cardinals version of that? I'm guessing the ceiling for what the Cardinals would be willing to do, at least under Mozeliak, is like the Max Scherzer thing. I don't know, maybe Nathan Eovaldi's in there. And I know they kicked the tires before. Something like that. Michael Wacha if he opts out. Obviously, we all would love to see them go get Corbin Burns, but I don't think that's happening. Max Fried? That'd be cool. But again, with the conversations about payroll right now, I'm not really going to let my mind go there right now. We need to see something different. But I do think especially if they don't plan on adding significant dollars to the lineup, and then they're shedding potentially Goldie, they shed Gibby and Lynn. Who knows? Maybe they're able to move Matz's contract. They already shedded $6 million from Giovanni Gallegos next year. There's just different ways that they can shed money where I'm like, hey, like, could you get one really interesting guy to pair with Sonny Gray, like Nathan Eovaldi, Max Scherzer? I'm blanking some of the other free agent names right now, but in that tier, it doesn't necessarily be those names, but they're not quite Max Fried, Corbin Burns, but they're a little bit below that. Again, I know we'd all love to see more than that, but I actually would be really interested in a rotation. I'm just going to use Eovaldi as an example. If it's Sonny Gray, Nathan Eovaldi, Quinn Matthews, Eric Fetty, Andre Palante with Michael McGreevy backing them up. But also too, like if they do make a trade with like a Nolan Gorman, Lars Nootbaar, what could they get? A young pitcher. They're not going to get like, don't throw out there trade Gorman for Logan Gilbert or stuff like that. That's not happening. The Mariners are not doing that. But could you package things to get Bryce Miller, Brian Wu? Could you package more to get Logan Gilbert or something? Maybe, or a young pitcher from somewhere else like that. So there's some interesting names out there. So yes, ideal rotation for next year. I agree. Sonny Gray and another veteran at the top with like Quinn Matthews, Fetty Palante, and then a list of McGreevy, Robersa, Tinkens, Graceffo, Matz, all backing up. Probably Michaelis because I don't think you can get rid of that contract. Or I don't think they will. I would love to see them try, though. And I would love to see it successfully happen, but we'll see. So last question of the day relates to Luken Baker. And so the question was, let me get the up-to-date stats because when they submitted this, I don't know if this is his OPS at the time. Oh, yes, it is. Okay. So Luken Baker is a 972 OPS this year. Why would you bring back Goldie when Baker is already so much better? Just spend the money on someone else. Hey, good question. Luken Baker has been really good so far. Here's the thing. It's been 28 plate appearances. I'm not ready to pencil him in as a significant starter next year, or as a full-time starter. As a platoon option, I'm very open to it, to be against left-handed pitching. Also, I need to check the splits right now, but I don't think he's really hit versus right-handed pitching to this point. But also, it's a 28 plate appearance sample size at the major league level. So it's like, it's hard for me to say one way or the other what kind of player he is. Obviously, he's almost 60% above league average right now, so he's been awesome. Let's look at the splits a little bit here for Luken Baker. He is 1 for 18 against right-handed pitching. 0.77 batting average. Not good. He's been excellent against left-handed pitching, though. A 3.65 WRC plus, a 2,100 OPS. It's been awesome. But that's 10 plate appearances. 10. So here's what I'd like to see down the stretch. Again, I'm not writing off Luken Baker because he's been awesome against left-handed pitching. He's been horrible against right-handed pitching. I would like to see Luken Baker play as much as possible down the stretch so you see what you have in him. You kind of know what you have in Goldie to an extent. There is a element of could he be Goldie-esque again next year, not 30% above league average all-star, but could he be a 15% above league average bat where he's at least league average against right-handed pitching, which he's been like 10% below, 15% below this year, and really good against left-handed pitching? Could he be that? I think you could probably see that again. Again, he's got to fix the runners in scoring position issue, but I don't know how much of that is a long, like that's going to be a forever issue for him now, or if that's like a weird thing this year. I don't know. But here's the thing with Baker. We, again, have only seen like 28 plate appearances, 18 against right-handed pitching. He's 1 for 18. It has been bad. Again, but it's a short sample size, so it's not super fair to him. He's awesome against left-handed pitching. Again, elite, and elite's understatement. He is like going sicko mode on. I don't know why I said that. Never say that, but he is just like insane right now against left-handed pitching. It is 10 plate appearances. The Cardinals need to let him play more, see what they have. I do think if he's with the organization next year, you got to have him on the major league roster, at least as a bench bat and an option against left-handed pitching. But anything more than that right now, I think is a major stretch. And it's not just because it's a small sample size here, but also, again, I'm not some prospect guru. I follow it more than probably the average person, but I'm not going to try and act like I'm one of the best scouting minds out there by any means. There's not a lot of people who are saying Luken Baker is like primed to go destroy the major league level. If anything, people have talked about he can have a heater against any kind of pitching. And so like He can go for hot stretches, but like he's not necessarily like a major league caliber first baseman. So I feel like I get a lot of criticism sometimes for saying like, "Hey, Lars Nootbaar has been good for 60% of the season," and it's like, well, that's just that you can't cut out the other 40%. You cut out the other sample size. Like, okay, then why are we overreacting to 28 plate appearances of Luken Baker? Again, I like what I see. I really do against left-handed pitching. It's not there against right-handed pitching yet. And if the Cardinals want to roll with an Alec Burleson, Luken Baker split or a platoon next year, I think that can make a lot of sense, especially at the price point. But I do think there's a world where bringing back Goldie could make sense. Now, here I will give you the reasons why, or the ways I could be talked into Goldie. I'm not saying they should bring back Goldie, but here's if all these boxes are checked, I'm open to it for sure. What's the price point? If it's not an insane contract, I'm probably interested. The other big thing, and it's actually the biggest thing for me, is are the Cardinals gonna pull the trigger if Goldschmidt's not good next year and bench him, play him less, DFA him, whatever it takes? If they ride with him the whole year when he's bad again, I don't want any part of it. Give me Luken Baker, Alec Burleson. I'm not messing with it. But if we can confidently say, hey, it's going poorly again, they will bench him or whatever, then I'm open to it, because if it goes well, you have a really good defensive first baseman, which I don't think people are talking enough about. We've literally not seen Luken Baker play first base yet. I think it's a major problem. I'm guessing that tells you that they don't believe him playing first base right now. Otherwise, I think they want to see reps there. They're not really doing it. And Alec Burleson, we just don't really know what he can do as a defensive first baseman yet. Now, what I would respond to that is we need to see that down the stretch. Cardinals, play Luken Baker, play Alec Burleson at first base down the stretch so we can see the defense. We need to see it. But also another thing about Alec Burleson is he's not been very good in the second half. I think I'd have to look. I meant to do this beforehand. I'm pretty sure Goldie's second half stats are better than Alec Burleson's right now. Alec Burleson's been below league average at the plate in the second half. It's not been good. It's like a sub 700 OPS. Again, I'm high on Alec Burleson, but I think these are things you got to think through. I don't think people are giving enough credit right now that Alec Burleson's kind of fallen off. Luken Baker's a super small sample size, and Goldie's been good lately. Again, don't overpay for Goldie. Don't guarantee him a starting spot the whole year and be refused to take him out of the lineup. But if he's willing to play at a smaller rate, maybe he's hey Goldie, we're playing on you being our starter, but we're not going to be afraid to bench you if we have to. I think he'd understand. That's good. But if they're going to be afraid to bench him, I'm out on that. So again, I know it probably comes across as I'm not a believer in Luken Baker and I don't like it. That's not true. I just am saying, like, how many times have the Cardinals got in trouble? Well, they usually don't give guys enough opportunity. Well, that's actually not. Sometimes they give guys too much opportunity. Sometimes they don't give them enough opportunity. In the case of Luken Baker, I think it's fair to say this is a small sample size. They need to continue to give him more opportunity against left-handed pitching for sure to show like, hey, because if he's elite against left-handed pitching, that's an asset. But they also need to give him against right-handed pitching so we know, like, is he just like a non-factor? Because that's what it's looked like so far. And then if you trust Alec Burleson, Luken Baker split there, then cool. But I don't think you should write off Goldie just yet because of Luken Baker's production, because it's such a small sample size. And please don't, like, I know he's hit a lot of home runs, had a good OPS at AAA. Don't come at me with that as hard, because we've seen, and I feel like some people that are saying the Luken Baker stuff have criticized the Cardinals for like, well, who cares what Jordan Walker did in the minors? Who cares what Dylan Carlson did in the minors? They're not good at the majors. It's like, well, who's to say that's going to be not Luken Baker either? So again, sorry, I'm coming across as very pessimistic on Luken Baker. I'm not. I would love to see him succeed. I think he's earned more opportunities, so give him more opportunities, but I'm not ready to pencil in. Write him in pen, pencil him in as a first baseman next year. Platoon, maybe, but still need to see more. So appreciate you guys tuning in for this. Like and subscribe. Comment down below if you have any questions you want addressed for next time, and we'll see you next time or see you Sunday potentially. I think I'm probably not gonna be there, but I know they'll be live for another episode of Dealing the Cards, and we'll be back next week with a Q&A episode. Thanks for watching.